Well, welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes on the Arcade Radio Network. And this is DJ Demon keeping you company through this whole episode. Sounds like I'm recording a show, really. Anyway, this is a very technical discussion, so you might want to give this episode a miss if this is not your thing. Okay, let's go. About 2 weeks ago, I started up this audio discussion. We had an episode where I just went through the basics. Now we will delve into the whole stack and go through everything that you do to set up a perfect audio, or at least an audio you believe in. I know I do. So, we assume that you know about compressors, expanders, limiters, equalizers and stuff. Otherwise, please check up on the facts there. Try to learn how they work. Right, so let's go. Alright, everything has been dialed in and this is pretty much what we're doing. So how do you go about getting that nice sound? 3 rules. You always have to have rules, right? The first rule is very simple. Steal. Steal everything that is not nailed down. That is, watch all the YouTube videos, read the white papers, kinda get the books, go to lectures, write down how other people are configuring their stuff, and learn from it. Good. Rule number 2, you may not go with everything they say. Of course, you can steal all the settings and set up everything exactly like they did, but you need to dial it in yourself, because it will probably sound fine for them, but it may or may not work for you, depending on the fact that we have different voices, different rooms, and different ideas on what constitutes a good sound for what we're building. So experiment, dial, try, trial by horror, and so on. Rule number 3. Don't do this when you're tired. Make sure that when you're dialing everything in, you have spent the last 15 minutes before you started without listening to anything. No music, no nothing. You're well rested, so otherwise you can get this kind of ear fatigue. And ear fatigue simply means that you are... Let's put it like this. Assume that you open a manhole and walk down into the sewers, okay? And you will feel a really rank smell, but after a few minutes you won't feel the smell anymore. It will feel fine. You get used to it. And your ears, or rather, should I say, your brains, they learn the audio, which means if you kind of go on, dialing everything in, after a few minutes, you will stop hearing the difference you're making. So when you're kind of doing an audio recording session and stuff, make sure that you rest between the sessions. Make sure that you need to take a break. I would say, if you can, like every 40 minutes or something, but find your own thing. Okay, those are the 3 rules. Now let's make the audio. And I kind of went for the American broadcast audio. Think about Howard Stern or any kind of DJ talking. It's augmented bass, a bit of a proximity effect, and pretty heavy compression. If you ask me, that's how I envision it. So that's what we're doing. And a bit of a repetition from last time. This audio thing is actually entering the audio processing on this channel strip. This channel strip is first, then we can walk from top to bottom. So let's start with the channel strip. And the first thing we need to deal with is room acoustics. And also stuff like background noise level. I have a lot of machines running here, so it's a very bad recording environment. But I have no other option here. This is what I got, and this is what we're going to deal with. So at this time, we're going with the expander. And expander is that's the green knobs here, where I kind of pull around the mouse pointer. And it works like this. A noise gate or an expander kinda works a bit the same way. A noise gate, for an example, when you are silent or your audio levels fall under a certain threshold, what you will get done is it cuts the audio off. An expander kinda does the same, but it instead lowers the levels, a preset amount of decibels, okay? As you can see here, those green lights comes on when I'm silent. Okay, that means that you're kind of pushing the audio down 6 decibels here. I think that's how it's meant to be read out. And I'm going to show you how this works. For this, you might want to have your headphones on. Otherwise, if you have this over loudspeakers, you may not hear it. So I'm going to be silent, and then I'm going to disable the expander, and you can hear the difference, okay? Okay, I don't know if that got through, but you can hear, you should be able to hear that it's pretty hefty increase in background noise. So that's the first thing we're doing. Good. The second thing is the filters here. The filters down here, I don't use them because I kind of filter that way in the last step of the process. But if you don't, you need to set a cutoff below 50 hertz or 70. Because then you can remove rumbling from cars outside and stuff like that. Yeah, we've spoken about this previously. I'm going to show you why you shouldn't dial it up too much. So you're going to have to increase here, and everything sounds hunky-dory, and then suddenly it sounds like a telephone call. As you can see, I'm cutting off everything below 300 hertz. 350 hertz even, and that does not sound good. So yeah, be careful with it, okay? Okay, now let's talk about the equalizer. It's over here, and that's the colored knobs here on the midsection of this strip. They are sectioned into low frequency, medium frequency, and high frequency. So let's talk about the medium frequency. This mid-range of frequencies are kind of good to detect and handle harshness in the audio and room acoustics. So what you do here is the lower middle frequencies. At first you can dial it to kind of lower, attenuate the signal. The filter skirts here, or the Q factor, is how many frequencies around the center frequency we will actually affect. I set it like this. And then you can sweep through here. I'm not going to do this, but then you can hear when a frequency when the signal sounds less harsh, you've kind of found a frequency that's good to kind of cancel out. Then you have to fix the Q factor here to get it good and see how much you are supposed to decrease the signal. And you do the same thing for the green ones, that's the upper frequencies. And this one seems to believe that 200 hertz up to 70 kilohertz, that is your medium frequencies. There's a bit of an overlap between them, but there we are. Then we have the high frequencies, or the treble if you want to call it that. And the treble is kind of like you increase the whole thing, a number of decibels, can be a bit of a danger with, because you can have a very sibilant and very harsh, almost unreal sound. But you have to understand this, that you can also add some kind of life to it. You can add some kind of vibrance to the sound, a bit of, it sounds more perky. I can't really explain it more than that. It also removes this kind of boxed in feeling. So you have to kind of dial it in yourself. I like having some heavy treble, but I know a lot of audio engineers that recommend that you don't do that. Okay, so you can see my settings. I am operating somewhere around 6 kilohertz, and I'm increasing 2 steps. I think that's close to, that should be like 5 dB. I think each little dot here is like 3 dB, 6, 9, 12, 15. Yeah, that should be it. So the last part here is all about the bass, no treble. And yeah, we can kind of dial it with this. Here's what happens if I kind of dial it back to neutral. Now you can hear that it's not that much of a difference. And if I dial it down, it's kind of the same thing as that filter cutoff I tried. We can also dial it up, and then at the time it's going to be like, oh, that's no nice. Oh, that seems to be quite okay with my voice. Everything is set up to a certain voice, and this works for mine. And that's the frequency. I seem to be working somewhere around what's that, 80 hertz, maybe, something like that. That's where it's centered. Okay, good. You can also remove the equalizer. You just see what does my voice sound without it. So here is my voice without any equalization, and here is with it. You can probably hear it has a little bit more presence, if I may say so. At this time, we're done with the channel strip. We're leaving that and we're going into the first compressor stage. And here is a rule that I found that is pretty heavy in use in the industry, and that is having two compressors. The first one will kind of keep the high peaks and kind of when you're screaming into the microphone, we'll keep that in check. As you can see, the needle doesn't deflect, it doesn't seem to be on. But if I start talking and you see the thing there, then it kind of starts cutting in there, as it's supposed to handle that. The input and output handles kind of, the input and output, obviously. You have to dial that in, because the more compression you need to add, the more you need to compensate, kind of, because compression kind of pushes the sound down, and then you need to compensate and push it up again. That will also, compressor is compressing dynamics, so the difference between the high amplitude and the low amplitude will be less than. So when I start screaming and the needle start deflecting, it's actually pushing everything above a certain amplitude down to make me scream less. It kind of compacts the audio. The ratio here tells you how much. 4 here means 4:1 or 4:1, meaning if I go to the threshold and then I increase the audio signal by 4 decibels, when it has compressed it, the increase will only be 1 decibel. So 8 decibels with 4:1 means it will be 2 decibels coming through the whole device. You have to be careful with that. If you dial it too much, you will have nasty breathing and pumping effects. But that's beyond this discussion. Know that attack and release knobs have to be set up to kind of work. I have found out that the very fast attack time seems to be able to get me some distortion in the bass registers. It depends very much on. So try, and when it sounds right, it's good. So this one is now set up. Next thing is kinda the roadless Treble. I actually paid extra for this one. This is a De-esser, and the word sibilant comes to mind here. Sibilant has an S in it. So does a word like scale, or I don't know, scorpion. The S has enormous power, and it actually, for some voices, can cut through glass. It sounds nasty, and my voice is alas one of those. It's different between human and human. Some people don't have it, some people do have it, and I have a lot of sibilance in my voice. So this one kinda is a compressor working only on the frequencies around the sibilant frequency. I think that's, if you can take a look here, it's like 6.2 kilohertz. That's kind of where I found this. And as you can see, the needle here, or the bars here, they never work unless I say S. You see, as soon as I start using S sound here, they start working like crazy. So that's a thing. Okay, so now we have we reined in the sound a bit. It's not as dynamic anymore, but still we need to do something more. So enter the Teletronics leveling amplifier model LA2A. This one is a thing of the 60s, and I think this silver edition is from somewhere around 1969. It's real tube. The real device had tubes. This is obviously a digital version, but that means that the pattern of distortion and the pattern audio quality will be affected by the imperfection of tubes, basically. And yes, of course, this is also true in this digital representation. So you want it to sound a little bit like this tube warmth. It's kind of a trend, but it sounds awesome. I really love this kind of sound. Okay, it's a very simple compressor that can be turned into comp mode, which means like 3:1, or limit mode, which is what we're using now. That's infinity:1, which means above a certain threshold, you kind of squash the audio. This means that it cannot deflect too much. If you or up at -20, you will hear how the audio gets totally squashed down. We can test this. As you can see, it's 40. So I'm gonna start dialing this up too much, and now it's okay. Okay, that's I don't know if anybody heard that. You can see just how much it damages the audio, and if I dial it in the other direction, I will overload the system, so I can't do that, obviously. The gain here is the makeup gain. If you squash the audio, you need to kind of push the whole signal up again. And as I said last time, when you kind of compress audio, you kind of take the amplitude and the dynamics and squash it. And then you need to, as I said, push it up. And now the sound is very, very tight. If you kind of look at the needles everywhere, especially this little thing, you can see that I have a very low dynamics. Maybe I'm a little bit at the limit of overloading here. And for those of you looking at the meter on the mid right here, you can see I'm having a pretty heavy what you call loudness unit thing going on there. But that's kind of how I work this. Okay, so you also have this gain reduction here, which kind of shows how the needle is supposed to work, I believe. And this needle shows deflects over how much it reduces the gain. So as you can see, I kind of top at about 5 decibels, which is kind of okay for a limiter. I think it sounds good. Also notice that this limiter has a very slow reaction time. That is, attack and releases are not good for some things. So this is kind of like the brick wall limiter in the end of the whole processing chain that you really want. So yeah, that sounds awesome if you ask me, because generally you want this broadcasty sound. And this is the last thing. I spoke a bit about it last time, and it is about cutting off everything below 50 Hertz, and in this case everything above 15 Hertz. It also probably adds a little bit of an analog kind of imperfection, which is nice. I think this one I could actually remove, because I actually have, as I shown on this channel strip, the cutoff here, and I don't think I win anything by cutting off the high frequencies. That was a thing they did back in the day with broadcasting. It was generally a rule, and this is something my father told me, that above 15 kilohertz you don't broadcast anything there. I don't know if that was some kind of technical thing with the transmitters or the audio cables and stuff. So I guess this is a holdover from those days. But I think on the internet you have no need for this. And know this, I'm 46 and I have pretty okay hearing for someone my age. Not perfect, but pretty okay. And I can't hear above 12 kilohertz. I think that's kind of normal for my age. When you're 20, you may be able to hear like 18, 19, or maybe 20, but probably not, meaning that most people can lose hearing. So we can test this out. Assume for a moment that you are in your 80s. Just assume this. You will probably hear, this is probably how it will sound. This is what you can hear. If you have a hearing deficiency, you might actually cut here, and now you can sound. That sounds awful. Okay, I mixed up the words here. I mean, awful. Yeah, it sounds awful. So we dial back here, and you can see that between 8 and 10, it's kind of like a little bit of presence is there. And about 12, I have no idea if that did anything. As I said, I can hear about 12, so I mean, that's where we are. So, and the low cutoff, as I previously demonstrated, kind of does bad things as well when dialed too much. So I think this should tell you anything. And remember, once this audio gets in the preamplifier, it's all digital. When I'm recording this, there's no analog part anywhere. The microphone is analog, cables, they're electrical, and then you have a preamp. Once it leaves the preamp, everything, until it hits your headphone amplifier and your headphones, or maybe your your loudspeakers and stuff, it will be in the digital domain. Okay, we're gonna stop here, but I'm gonna say one thing before we're leaving. When you're listening, get good, very unbiased headphones. That is, headphones that do not color the thing. See if I can find those. This is a set of Sony headphones. They have a marvelous sound. Really one of my favorite headphones ever. I would never ever use it for recording anything because it's heavily biased, giving you overload in the bass registers, which is what it's designed to do. It sounds perfect for that kind of music. Actually, I haven't found any music that I don't like better for those. I can't remember exactly what the model was there. I can put that in the description. They are kind of very neutral, have a very boring sound, but you're very, very true to the sound. And depending on what you want, you can of course get better than that, but those are like $150 or something, which I think is reasonable. And then you need some kind of near field monitors that you can listen to. I have a set called Adam A7X, and they're kind of expensive, but Yamaha have a number of cheaper ones which can do a good job. Because when you're recording and you're listening, you should listen to a neutral set. If it sounds good in a neutral set, that is a studio monitor that doesn't color the audio too much, then it will probably sound good in someone's easy little speakers like those JBL Coke bottle speakers. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Or in your iPhone or whatever. Remember that. The reason why you need to be careful when you're recording audio is because people have crappy loudspeakers and headphones. Thank you for listening and watching, and well, I will be back in a few weeks with something more interesting perhaps, or something more technical. Thanks.